What's up, Net Soldiers? I'm Net Alliance, and welcome back to another video. So this is a special video, guys, because this is the first verses I've done in years. So if you guys want to see more of these, please let me know in the comments below. Also suggest some other future verses, and I will consider doing them. And if I do your verses suggestion, I will give you a shout out in the video. And also, since I am rebooting this verses series of mine, let me know what you guys like and dislike, and maybe I can kind of tweak the entire format to make it better, or just try to change things up. So let me know, comments below. And of course, as always, if you'd like more videos from me, please want to like, subscribe, and notifications for more. Now that said, guys, let's begin. Qui-Gon Jinn from episode 1 comes face to face with Obi-Wan Kenobi from episode 2. Both warriors are armed with their signature weapons. This is a battle to the death. Who wins? Qui-Gon Jinn was taken into the Jedi Academy at a very young age and soon became the Padawan learner of Jedi Master Jarl Dooku. Even at a young age, Dooku knew that Qui-Gon was different from other Jedi. Jinn wasn't trying to be an orthodox Jedi, he was just trying to be a good person, disobeying the Jedi code if he felt that it was right. Jinn later went on to deny a spot on the Jedi Council and take on a Padawan in the form of Obi-Wan Kenobi. The duo would travel the galaxy on adventures for years before Qui-Gon would finally meet his end, the Sith assassin Darth Maul. Qui-Gon Jinn was incredibly in tune with the Force, so much in fact that even Jedi Master Yoda respected Jinn's power, even though he disagreed with his methods. He was also an incredibly strong offensive duelist, as we saw in episode 1, when the 6-year-old Jedi managed to keep the 22-year-old Darth Maul on the back pedal. And this should be no surprise considering his master was Count Dooku, who was once one of the most renowned duelists in the entire Jedi Order, even being compared to Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Yoda. Now, this doesn't directly mean Qui-Gon is just as powerful as Dooku, but an argument could be made that the Count taught Qui-Gon a lot of his tricks and maneuvers. That doesn't mean he couldn't necessarily use them. Now, in Star Wars Legends, Qui-Gon has a lot more feats under his belt, like defeating his former Padawan who had turned to the dark side. However, since I'm only doing Qui-Gon Jinn from canon, a lot of his greater feats are kind of obsolete now, but there are some things he's done in the past, but nothing super mentionable. Now, like I mentioned previously, we saw Qui-Gon Jinn keeping up with an experienced warrior 3 times younger than him. And using that knowledge, you can assume when he was younger, he was most likely a beast. Though with this said, we are comparing Qui-Gon from episode 1. So while the 60-year-old can still kick butt, his battle endurance is weaker due to his age. So if a fight lasts longer than expected, he could begin to grow tired, which in turn could lead to his defeat, as we saw with Maul. But even with his older age, he was so intuitive with the Force, he was able to transcend the physical plane and become a Force ghost. And later on, he taught Kenobi and Yoda how to do it as well. So while Qui-Gon Jinn in episode 1 had passed his prime physically, he was still in great shape for his age and still very mentally capable. Obi-Wan Kenobi was born on the planet of Studion. He trained under Jedi Master Yoda as a youngling before becoming the Padawan of Qui-Gon Jinn. When Kenobi was a teenager, he and Qui-Gon were assigned to protect Duchess Satine of Mandalore, and during his stay, he would develop a relationship with the Duchess. However, while he had feelings for her, he ultimately chose to follow the Jedi Code. Later on, during the events of the Phantom Menace, Kenobi would meet a young Anakin Skywalker and take him on as an apprentice, following the death of Qui-Gon Jinn and the defeat of Darth Maul. And years later, Obi-Wan and Anakin would attempt to take on the sinister Count Dooku and fail, but luckily be saved by Master Yoda, causing the Count to retreat. Obi-Wan Kenobi was not the most gifted Jedi, but it was his determination and faith in the Order that led him to eventually be renowned as just as wise as Yoda. Kenobi was the apprentice of Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and learned much of the basic techniques of fighting from him. And after Qui-Gon's death at the hands of Darth Maul, Kenobi took on his own young and powerful apprentice Anakin Skywalker. And while Obi-Wan improved much in the way of saber fighting from episode 1 to episode 2, he had still not perfected his Sarisu defense stance like we see in episode 3. And at the beginning of the Clone Wars on Geonosis, Obi-Wan Kenobi comes face to face with Count Dooku and gets quickly dispatched. And it was this encounter that truly pushed Kenobi to want to be the warrior he becomes in episode 3. However, for this matchup, Kenobi has not yet faced the many trials and tribulations of the Clone Wars, and so while he still is an impressive duelist, I personally can't say he's at his prime yet. For while one could make the argument that he defeated Maul in episode 1, I would argue that his victory was more assured by Maul's arrogance over Obi-Wan's skill. battle. Not that Kenobi got steamrolled or anything, but it was clear that Darth Maul was the superior warrior. And like I mentioned earlier, even if you were to use the "he defeated Maul" defense, and I'll go into that a little bit further in the video, that argument quickly gets shot down when you realize just how fast Dooku dispatched him in episode 2. Now, while Kenobi isn't at his prime yet, and he isn't the greatest duelist, he is still able to keep a very clear head in battle, even in events where he is outclassed. And sometimes, as we saw with Maul, the brain is stronger than the sword. So with Qui-Gon Jinn a little bit past his prime, and Obi-Wan not exactly at his prime yet, this is definitely a closer battle than I was expecting. It's a very interesting dynamic to kind of introduce the entire fight. But in the end of the day, one of the fighters are superior to the other in my opinion. And I have to choose. The victor of this versus is Qui-Gon Jinn. And here's why. So as I mentioned, I think a lot of people would choose Obi-Wan over Qui-Gon in this fight, mostly because Kenobi defeated Maul when Jinn could not. But I personally find that argument invalid, for not only do we see Kenobi technically lose the fight right after Jinn gets stabbed, but for the majority of the fight, it was Qui-Gon powerhousing through Maul. So the argument Obi-Wan beat Maul and Maul beat Qui-Gon, so that means Obi-Wan could beat Qui-Gon, is just nonsense. I mean, on paper it sounds fine, but once you look deeper into the situation, you realize just how flawed the actual whole thought process really is. Now with that said, for the reason I picked Qui-Gon as the victor, as we saw in episode 1, Qui-Gon had Darth Maul under control the entire fight, constantly having him on the back pedal. It was only when his advanced age and fatigue got to him that Darth Maul managed to finally be able to push him back. So although Maul did pull out the victory, if there were less objects in their way, Jinn might have actually been able to overpower Maul. But of course, on the opposite side of things, Maul's greatest asset was the same as Kenobi's. They had age on their side. And by this time in Kenobi's Jedi career, he has yet to perfect his Sarisu defense form. So while Kenobi would definitely have more endurance than Qui-Gon, I don't believe his defense skills would have been able to take on Qui-Gon's powerhouse offense. So the fight would kind of go like this. It would start off with a little bit of force testing, and once they realized they're both adequate with the force, they would soon move the lightsabers. And right off the bat, Qui-Gon would have Obi-Wan on the back pedal, and this would be the moment of truth, the moment that would decide the true victor of this fight. And it pretty much comes down to this. If Obi-Wan can hold off Qui-Gon long enough for him to tire, then Kenobi can pull off the victory. But for me, I just don't see that happening, and I think that Qui-Gon could definitely strike Obi-Wan down before he get tired. But of course, with all this said, that's just my opinion. What is your opinion on this? Do you think that Obi-Wan would beat Qui-Gon? Do you think I made the right choice by making Qui-Gon better than Obi-Wan? Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, guys, in the beginning of the video, if you have any cool ideas for your future verses, please let me know in the comments below, and if I use your idea, I'll give you a shout out in that video. But thanks again for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Please remember to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace. Coming in at number 12, we have the Clone Wars movie. Since I started ranking movies, people have wanted me to rank this movie inside this video with the rest of them, and it's always the same spot every time. For this movie feels like 3 episodes of a TV show placed together to make a small little cartoon movie. And that's what it is. And that's why it's here on this list. I'm not attacking the Clone Wars series. The Clone Wars series is really good. But this movie is just not like a movie. So it's last on my list. At number 11, I have Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. So at one time, I actually had The Last Jedi a lot higher up on this list, for I initially thought its approach to storytelling was something that we've never seen before. However, while I have to give this film credit for trying something different, it's just not a Star Wars movie to me. The movie focuses so much on trying to subvert expectations the entire time that it forgets to actually tell a good, cohesive story. Now, I know people are expecting me to just destroy this movie right now, but I'm going to subvert your expectations and do something else. So for me, while this film doesn't work as a main saga movie, I honestly think that if this film was kind of on its own, like its own standalone film with characters that are different, and it still followed the same basic plot, I actually think this film would actually be really beloved. The issue is, the director Rian Johnson didn't seem to have the proper respect for the source material and the characters already established. I honestly believe that if Rian Johnson was given access to his own characters, his own story, his own plot, he could just make his own Star Wars movie, I think he would actually make a really good movie. The issue was, he was playing with someone else's story, and that just didn't work out well. And I said this in my Last Jedi review, but The Last Jedi feels like a part 1 to its own story, but The Last Jedi is supposed to be part 2 in the story. And the issue with that is, part 1 should be kind of like the establishment of the characters, which we saw in episode 7, Episode 8 should be kind of like them traveling to the point where they're going to be in Episode 9, but the issue is that second part, which is Episode 8, it feels like another origin story almost. So the characters are almost at like the exact same spot they were in Episode 7. And if your characters aren't going to evolve, you're wasting your time telling a story. And if you think about it, you could actually skip this movie altogether if you wanted to. The only things you really need to know going from Episode 7 to Episode 9 is that Luke and Snoke are dead. And yeah, the story doesn't change. It's just rough. And like I said, while there are some decent parts in this film, from a Star Wars movie perspective, it portrays its own fans, and that's why I have it here on this list.